Okay, it's 8:30, so I am going to call the meeting of May 17th to order. Welcome, everyone. You have an agenda that's in front of you. Any additions to the agenda? Councillor Christie.
If not, I'll move the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. The minutes of the February 15th Committee of the Whole meeting have been previously distributed. Any errors or omissions? Any corrections? If not, Reeve Whitstock.
I will move the minutes as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes from the February 15th Committee of the Whole meeting as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously as well. Okay, moving on in our agenda to 3.0, which is the Q1 Variance Report. So, Marika, whenever you're ready, please. And welcome.
Good morning, Council. Today I bring to you the first quarter variance report. As Council is aware, we have to adopt an operating and capital budget every year, and administration is committed to providing regular reports back to Council in terms of the operating results and capital results as we go through the year. So this report contains the operating budget summary by function and also one by department, as well as the investment summary. Typically, the quarterly reports also include a project report and a reserve summary, but with the budget having passed in March and us having operated on an interim budget until that point in time, there's really no expenditures related to the capital projects that have been approved, so that report will be seen in the second quarterly report. There's really no trends that were identified or anything like that with respect to those two items. So moving on to the operating budget summary by function, the one by department is also there for information, but we kind of tend to focus on the one by function. At this point in time, we're projecting about a $447,000 surplus, and it should be noted that $201,000 of that is related to DRP funding that we received in the first quarter. That's back to the 2018 flooding that happened, so it wasn't revenues that were actually budgeted for. So the operating surplus at this time is mostly related to that, and otherwise we're really on par with budget and what our expectations are. So within terms of revenues, like I said, that $201,000 is related to DRP funding. The rest of it is small but like we're looking like we're going to get a little bit more revenues on a few different items, but there's really in line with budget. The one thing that should be noted is the surplus in Q1 is higher than what we're projecting to year end, and that just relates to the fact that we've recorded penalties and fines in our accounting software at this point in time, but we're not sure whether or not those will be collectible, so they might be written off by council with future reports during the year. In terms of expenditures, we've got about a $224,000 favorable variance at this point in time. It relates a little bit to materials and goods, a little bit to contract goods and services. And again, there's a little bit of timing there. The surplus is a little higher in Q1 than it is projected to year end, and that just relates to the timing of expenditures during the year. Finally, the salaries and wages shows a little bit of a very favorable variance, and that's just related to turnover within positions during the year, and is sort of expected within any budget cycle. So in summary, we're really on budget. There's nothing big significant trends that have been identified that needs council attention in that regard. Finally, on the Appendix C, the investment report, again, we're kind of in the first quarter, similar returns as were in 2021, anywhere between 0.7% and 1.8%. But it should be noted that the prime interest rate increased in April, so in June there will probably be a little bit more of a favorable variance recorded on that one, just because we're able to get higher returns on the investments that we have. And that's all I have for Q1 variance report, if there's any questions.
Well, thank you very much for that report. Are there any questions on the Q1?
Pardon? Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Look at that. Took away the questions before they could be answered.
I'm doing my job then.
Anyone have questions? If not, what's the wish here?
This was just for
Just,
information. Yeah,
information,
we
right?
had
Yeah.
We had no motions that
Yeah.
were required out of
Yeah.
this one. There might be a motion, and well, there probably will be in the Q2 report to deal with the DRP funding that we received. Probably to request to put that into the disaster reserve, but
Right.
it's a timing thing, and it's not an issue to wait until then.
Okay. Well, if there are no questions, then Councillor McGee.
We need a motion to accept for information, so I'll make that motion to
Okay.
accept the variance report.
All right, thank you. And our thanks to you,
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Von Meerbach. We appreciate your attention to that, so thank you. So we have a motion to accept for information. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to 4.0, which is the Horseshoe Canyon discussion. So we're having a tag team. Ms. Sherwick and Ms. Buchanan, welcome. So whenever you're ready, moral support or not, we're looking forward to it, so. We'll see. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, yep, and I've got it brought up here on the screen. Okay, thank you so much. Well, good morning, Council. So this morning we're here to talk about a few of the strategies recommended by the Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group. And I have Jacqueline Buchanan with me this morning as well. So this morning we're presenting a proposal following some recommended strategies from the Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group for some additional opportunities that have been identified as part of the pay parking pilot project to potentially explore some new revenue generation at the site, specifically around the sale of branded items. And secondly, in preparing for budget 2023 and future budget discussions, administration would like to engage council in a discussion on the prioritization of the remaining Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group's recommended strategies. So discussion around this, these options are being presented following the Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group's recommended strategies and stakeholder discussions, and align with the focus group strategies to consider first and next, and as well we'll talk about those ones to consider later if at all. So some of these options would include moving forward with some of those recommended strategies, not moving forward with the strategies, or moving forward with all in a prioritized order, and that's what we're hoping to discuss today. Benefits in moving forward with these include that increased engagement, increased promotion of the site, brand ownership, opportunities for partnership, and of course disadvantages would include those increased budget impacts with new initiatives that we'll discuss here. And so I think we'll go through the presentation first and then talk about those discussion outcomes at the end and any new ones that may come up. So we will get started with the presentation. Okay. Awesome. So today, Jacqueline and I are bringing forward a discussion around Horseshoe Canyon to talk about prioritization of the recommended strategies, as we had mentioned. So there are a few specific strategies that we would like to discuss. Jacqueline will talk about branding and an overview of what that means for a specific site like Horseshoe Canyon versus having an organizational brand. And then I have prepared a proposed suggested prioritization of the remaining strategies from the Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group that I'll present and hopefully get some, would like to get some feedback on, and then we can discuss those moving forward. So just a bit of an overview. A lot of this information has been previously presented as part of the strategic plan and the department orientation presentations previously to council, but wanted to bring it back as a great overview just to get a sense of where things are currently sitting. So the Horseshoe Canyon, or sorry, the Kneehill County Tourism and Recreation Master Plan created back in 2017. And with that note there, Horseshoe Canyon has the potential to be one of Alberta's top tourism sites as noted in the plan there. And then just some of those short-term actions that were identified and the longer-term actions that were included as part of that plan there. And then going into just a look at what the original strategies as presented were from the Horseshoe Canyon Master Plan. So an overview there, and we'll get into the breakdown as they were prioritized or evaluated by the focus group in later slides. And again, just an overview of what the focus group's work was, to assist with and making recommendations to Kneehill County Council on matters related to Horseshoe Canyon, which will then help guide future initiatives through the review of the Horseshoe Canyon Master Plan and its key recommendations, as well as the supporting documents and data. And just an overview again, the group met for 7 meetings from November 2020 to March 2021, and then final recommendations were presented to Council in April of 2021. Okay. So these are some of, again, this has been presented previously, but just a bit of an overview again. So any of the highlighted strategies that I've included in these slides, these are ones that have been that are in place or have been implemented already as part of just the ongoing operations. So strategies to consider first from the focus group, again, that improving signage and wayfinding throughout the canyon, that's something that's ongoing. Develop a compelling brand and logo to use in all aspects of canyon promotions and operations and sell merchandise on site. Provide washrooms at the top of the canyon, which also requires the installation of associated utilities. Collaborate with the Nature Conservancy of Canada and adjacent landowners. Again, that's something that's ongoing as part of our regular operations. Implement furnishing fixtures and amenities, including Wi-Fi at the top of the canyon, enhancing the day use area, again, something that's ongoing. Implement parking fees by donation. So while we have a fee, we do also receive donations. People will donate more money sometimes as visitors to the site. Operate site staffing with our on-site ambassadors. That's something that's ongoing as part of the pilot project. Actively managing visitors and visitor use of the canyon, again, ongoing as part of operations. Renting temporary hosting spaces for special occasions. So that's something that we have in place with permitting weddings to be held at certain sites at the canyon. So not in terms of a seasonal temporary hosting space, we don't currently have that, of course, but we do permit use of the lookout points or just our natural plateau areas, and then as well our picnic shelter, just depending on what the request is for those events. Establishing a voluntary Friends of Horseshoe Canyon group, and then continuing to provide regular and preventative maintenance. So of course that's part of our operations as well. Okay. So now Jacqueline will speak about. So this first strategy that we want to talk about is the one around the brand and logo. So Jacqueline's going to speak just around the general concept of branding.
Thank you, Shelby. So yeah, I was invited here today to touch base about branding. I know this is a conversation, again, that's come back a number of times to council. To me, I would consider that having that compelling brand and that logo in place somewhat of a priority right off the bat. It's really going to be key in any further marketing and development efforts that we want to participate in. We want people to recognize this destination as our own, set clear concepts as to what that represents to us. What does that mean? What are our priorities? To do this, we need to agree on a brand, one that represents both the fact that the site is owned and carefully maintained and protected by Kneehill County, but it is also its own unique destination worthy of its own brand and its own logo. Branding represents an emotion, a reaction, a memory, a place. The corresponding logo that accompanies a brand is a visual representation of that motion. It's essentially a cue card to remind you of the emotion you felt when you visited that place. One of my favorite destination development gurus, I kind of have an economic development crush on him. It's Roger Brooks. Roger Brooks does a lot around the branding and development of specifically tourism destinations with the sole purpose of bringing people into a community. So I went through and I've pulled some of the information that Roger Brooks has given us on branding and logos and the information why it's important to us. So I'm not going to go through it all, but I'm going to touch base on some of the key facts today. So logos and slogans aren't brands. They're merely marketing messages used to reinforce, support, and strengthen your brand. Brands are perceptions. They're what people think of you, good or bad. Brands are about differentiation. What sets you apart from other destinations? Why is Horseshoe Canyon different than Drumheller? Why is Horseshoe Canyon different than Kneehill County, even though it's part of us? Brands have a narrow focus. We have to narrow our focus. We have to narrow it some more. Brands are specific. They define the niche. Brands are about ownership. So Napa Valley, as we know, owns Wine Country brand. Nashville owns the country music brand. Branson, Missouri owns the music theater capital of the world brand. Kneehill County owns the Horseshoe Canyon brand. Successful brands are built on product. Brands are promised that you will deliver on the perception created of your brand. Those perceptions are built on product and communicated by marketing, not the other way around. Your product must fulfill your brand promise. For decades, for example, Volvo was touted as the safest car. The product backed it up, and today it's seen as an even safer car. When we look at specifically, and again, those are directly the words of Roger Brooks, but as we look specifically at Horseshoe Canyon, we have a world-class destination that is recognizable to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And those people think it belongs to Drumheller. My belief is part of that is because we've never owned it. We've never slapped our name on it. We've really never toted it as our own. We've never promoted it as our own. We promote it as its own independent, unique entity without truly claiming it as Kneehill County. Just a not so fun fact, film companies call Drumheller when they want to use Horseshoe Canyon. Drumheller forwards them to us. So by defining a brand and an image, a logo, we can really start claiming this destination that we've worked so hard to protect. You know, we have developed it. We're all aware of the contentious issue around it, I guess, is really the only way to put it. But at the end of the day, we own it. We do great works down there. We're recognized around the province for the things that we've done for this site. By having a brand in place and having a logo that has our name on it, we can really start claiming it as our own. And once we start claiming it as our own, we start opening the doors for further collaborative opportunities, potential revenue sources, things like that that are really going to help us elevate the destination that we've developed. Do you have anything to add to my?
Oh, thank you for that. Awesome. So moving on to the next one. So currently we don't have an official brand for the site, but when we began implementing some of the interpretive signage and some of the signage for the pay parking program on site, we did want to make sure that there was a cohesive overall look and feel to the signage that was going to be used on site. And also that it fit with what the new Kneehill County logos are. You can see that with the layers there. And then as well, any of the other kind of regional branding also. And and we do see that a lot of the colors are complementary there with some of that original brand identity work that was completed back in 2017 by Red Pine Design there. So then the proposal is, instead of going back to the original drawing board on this, this is what we'd like to move forward with. This ties in with the signage that we have on site. It fits with, again, that regional branding that's in existence that I noted. And then as well, this works well, we feel, with some of the opportunity for that branded merchandise.
And when we look at the graphic in itself, when we look at the logo, so this logo is to represent the brand. This is to represent the unique landscape of the destination. It's to represent the conservation efforts. It's to really represent what we want people to think of it. What has been done here, ironically, and I have to plead forgiveness on this, when I started and I developed the Explore Kneehill logo with our contractors, I actually provided them the Kneehill County brand and this brand for Horseshoe Canyon, because I should have asked more questions before I did that, but I didn't, and it all worked out. And really what it does is it takes three unique entities and it ties them all together visually. So the orange that you actually see in the Horseshoe Canyon and the Explore Kneehill, those are specific colors that were selected by two completely separate graphic designers to complement the colors that already exist in the Kneehill County brand. When we look at our Kneehill County logo, that's a logo that represents a corporate agency. It's not necessarily one that's specific to a brand, it's specific to a corporate entity. Where when we look at something like Horseshoe Canyon, you're looking at, again, that big brand picture and how it's going to be identified in the public.
So these design concepts were originally proposed last year when we had some of that design work done for the paid parking signage as potential staff t-shirts, and then it branched off into a discussion of these may be a great option as well for branded merchandise. So again, this is something that fits with that recommended strategy from the focus group. And also part of why we're bringing this forward now is there has been some interest expressed from a third party about potentially partnering on selling branded merchandise. So this is something that, as part of the ongoing pilot project that was presented on back in September 2021, following the end of that first season, something that we'd like to look at ongoing as part of the pilot. And so, again, this is something that administration would like to explore and look at the potential of selling a small selection of branded items on site, potentially as well. But first, that official brand is needed. So that's one of the things we're asking today, is that these materials be recommended for the approval as the Horseshoe Canyon brand, and that they also be recommended for approval for the purpose of promotion and sale at Horseshoe Canyon by staff or potentially by third-party operators. Okay.
Just
move- oh, yes,
before
of
you
course,
go on,
yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Can we go back to the T-shirt?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm hearing the comment that we should be claiming Horseshoe Canyon as our own. So in what way do these materials identify Horseshoe Canyon as being part of Kneehill County?
And we could certainly include Kneehill County, Alberta on those as well.
That's just a
Yes,
question.
For
like,
sure, yeah.
Yeah,
Based
and
on comment that I heard,
Yes.
that we need to claim it.
it's the first thing I
Yes.
noticed when the image came up, because these are old concept
Yes,
photos.
they are old concept ones.
So essentially, the way it would work is potentially under Canyon, so in
Here, we
a
can go
similar
back to this,
text to
yeah.
that Kneehill County, Alberta, that would be under that logo where it says Canyon on the bottom. Again, because it's important that we start putting our name on this stuff.
Well, own it, claim it, champion it,
Absolutely.
right? Okay,
Exactly, that's exactly where we're at. Start accepting our own accolades.
okay.
And something that that we've discussed too, and something that comes up with our staff on site, is that it's been a great opportunity to identify, the parking team as being from Kneehill County, because I would say a majority of the visitors who are arriving on site, they know they're going to Horseshoe Canyon. They don't know that they're in Kneehill County. And then they see the vehicles, they see the staff that are welcoming them. And then that starts that conversation of, oh, okay, this is Kneehill County that maintains and cares for this site and is our stewards of this site. So it's just something that,
Okay.
yes.
And then that furthers the conversation, once people start recognizing this as Kneehill County, the question starts getting asked, well, what's Kneehill County? What's in Kneehill County? And it opens that opportunity for us. We've spoken of the Eiffel Tower in the past. People go to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower, but when they get home from Paris, it's not the Eiffel Tower that they're generally talking about. So this is such an important destination for us and our region to really get that tourist curious about the rest of the county and moving north into the rest of the region and getting them to spend some time in our area as well as Drumheller. I mean, nobody's ever going to say, now we won't go to Drumheller today, but if they go, they can circle through Kneehill County on their way home. They can come for lunch. There's a lot they can do here.
Okay, so I'm going to display my ignorance on what was happening there last year. So are we providing materials at Horseshoe Canyon about other destinations within Kneehill County? So are we, when they ask the question, what is Kneehill County? Do our staff have materials there that describes Kneehill County and describes other destinations, potential places that they might like to visit?
So I'll start maybe, and then I'll just, so with COVID, last season, we decided to not have any paper materials on site for handing out, so brochures and that. That's something that we are looking at bringing back for this year. However, we did have signs set up at the main lookout area with the QR code directing them to the Explore Kneehill site, and if you wanted to speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of last season, when our parking attendants started, Shelby and the team actually invited me down to do training with their parking attendants, where we spent about an hour and just sat down with them and showed them some of the key sites in the region, but also got them thinking about the region in a different way. Let's face it, we grow up here. Sometimes you don't realize how important what you grow up with every day, how vital and important it is to somebody else. So we actually did training with them, showed them the key sites, talked about what was really cool and got them starting to think, when somebody says to you, it's like when you go into a restaurant and you say, what do you recommend? And the server's like, oh, I wouldn't eat here.
I've never eaten here.
Right? Yeah. So it was taking those things, it's like, what do you like about the county? What coffee shop do you go to? What do you order when you're there? And saying, okay, just because this is the everyday to you, this is something important to a traveler. So we did that training, and then actually we had QR codes done for the Explore Kneehill campaign that go back to the Explore Kneehill section on the website, which is the full asset inventory of the region. Shelby had a beautiful sign done up for us that's right by the main sign where you can scan the QR code. We know conclusively last year it was scanned just over 300 times. Now, that QR code does exist at other places in the region. I can't pinpoint the area, but it's still there and it's still accessible, and the team at parking can say, oh yeah, just scan this. Another thing that's a future consideration, there is some signage down there that is still specific to Canadian Badlands. We've had some conversations on how we can make that more regional, make it more specific to Kneehill, less specific to Lethbridge, and just really revamp it all. We have a lot of work to do to figure that one out, though, because we didn't pay for that. So it is a consideration on how we can make our signage a little more front and center down there.
Okay, so I'll just follow up. Because I'm a sort of a techie dinosaur, paper is important to me, and so just so we're considering doing both then, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, it was certainly a unique season last year, and so we thought we would start it with no paper, and of course at that time we were also working with the considerations around social distancing and all of that,
Yeah.
so just thought that that was the best strategy to start the season with, and wanted to also see how many people asked for it. So we did have a few people ask for brochures, just more information about the area as well. So we decided, okay, we'll see how things are going in 2022 with considerations around the pandemic, and then bring that back. So yes, that's something that we want to include, especially with now having a booth on site. We'll have room for carrying that type of materials as well.
And cleaning it up.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, and also that was also a concern too, but something that we'll monitor too, is that consideration with just having, paper floating around the site, so, but.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Penner.
Just a quick question while we're talking about staff and whatnot else, or our ambassadors, if
Yes,
you want to call
yeah.
them that. Are they wearing Kneehill clothing, or how are they being identified, other than their reflective vests, maybe? I'm
Not
sure.
currently, yeah, sorry, and not currently any other, well, they're provided with some of our staff, just hats and that at the beginning of the season, but other than just, the high-vis vest. So that was actually why those old design concepts that were presented there, that's where that kind of originated, was, having that, something that will make staff stand out as being, part of it further, and just, again, playing into that role of that overall cohesive look to the site, and more official too. So that's something that we would like to.
I think it's very valuable.
Yes.
They're seen, and they know who to talk to real quick,
That's
or
it.
whatever, but they got their vest on too. But I mean, it looks, we'll use our branding when it comes.
And that's, and that was the thought too, is if, then that's also something that, then that's a bit of an advertisement as well, is it would be a different shirt, obviously, different, more, I don't want to say uniform style, but something that looks a little bit different, that identifies people as staff. But that was certainly part of that conversation too.
Thank you. I guess we'll let you continue then.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, and so then just going back to then the focus group strategies. So in the strategies to consider next, again, the highlighted ones point to ones that are already in progress or have been implemented there, so, and are ongoing. So implementing paid parking at the canyon, attracting target markets to the canyon, developing trails around the canyon rim, ensuring trail operations protect the canyon bottom. That's always something that's a consideration for our operations. Encouraging private sector opportunities that ensure reasonable return on investment for the county. Collaborate with nearby regional tourism locations, and strengthen the focus on Indigenous relationships and history. And then in the focus group strategies to consider later, if at all, allowing a diversity of overnight experiences to be operated by a third party, collaboratively developing a paid parking passport with other sites in the region, creating a permanent visitor pavilion and hosting space, enhancing access to the bottom for all, or for visitors of all abilities, implementing furnishing washrooms, fixtures, and amenities at the bottom of the canyon, and providing the necessary utilities at the bottom. So again, just wanted to bring some of those forward, and I have a proposed prioritization of these remaining strategies that I wanted to, that I will have for council's discussion here. But again, just I know that we've talked a lot about what the possibilities are here, and some of these are captured in what the focus group has evaluated. Something that has been discussed too around the idea of offering that diversity of overnight experiences, which was part of the discussion that I'd like to have as well today, is that if this is something that council would like to see implemented in the future, would it be something that's operated by Kneehill County, or something that there's also that opportunity to explore potential leasing and explore partnership with a third party that way as well. So this overview has been presented before in other presentations, but this shows per the Horseshoe Canyon Master Plan, just an idea of what that could look like if there were to be a diverse overnight experiences there in the form of yurts or in the form of those glamping style cabins. And so this is over at the eastern portion of the canyon. So again, just wanted to bring that forward, because that is one of the ones that's it is in the strategies to consider later, if at all, but certainly one of those more longer term ones that would require more discussion. So I wanted to bring that forward also.
And as Shelby
Oh,
goes
yeah.
through this prioritization list, you know, the conversation she and I had, tourism development, which is basically your infrastructure, is an area where funding is available right now, both provincially and federally. However, like all the other funding opportunities we talked about, like broadband, we have to have a plan in place. So once we have a defined list of priorities, it's something that Shelby can then have the opportunity of putting in her budget, starting moving these programs forward, and then we can start chasing funds to cover some of the costs of them. There's some pretty substantial pots of money available, but we have to have something already pre-approved and ready to roll so that we can obtain that money, because we have such short lead ways to get that funding when it comes available.
Thank you. Awesome. So before I talk about the suggested prioritization of the remaining strategies, I like to include these clippings just as a reminder of what that spirit of place means at this site. It's a unique landscape. It's that gateway to the Badlands. It's one of the first stops where people can explore these geological formations up close in a way that they can't at other sites in the Badlands. I just wanted to share a quick story too with council. I was at Horseshoe Canyon yesterday with our parking team, and I spoke with this couple who had just finished their hike. They were just walking up out of the bottom of the canyon, and they asked me if I knew where the iridium layer was in the canyon. And they had this book on geology-focused hikes in Alberta that said there are spots in the canyon where you can find a very thin layer of that element, which is found in meteorites, and it's also then found in similar layers where fossils are found. And I thought that that was really interesting and unique, and I wanted to share that story because I just thought it was a great reminder of why people come out to explore the site and how unique it is, and what a unique site it is for people to see that geology up close. Okay. So this is what we have to present on the suggested prioritization of strategies, and of course these can just be moved around if this is something that the council would like to see changes on. This is just a starting point for the discussion. But starting with the first one, so developing a compelling brand and logo to use in all aspects of the canyon promotions, establishing a voluntary Friends of Horseshoe Canyon group. So that was something that was identified by the focus group as a great way to engage those stakeholders that are located in the immediate area, those neighbors to the site. So those could be, you know, private landowners, as well as groups like the Nature Conservancy as well. So opportunity, and then also if there's residents in the area that are interested in volunteering there too. So that can, and what was kind of discussed is that there's potential to have sort of annual kind of town hall style meetings, or just a dinner or something where people can come together and learn about the work that's been done at the canyon as it pertains to those who are, immediately impacted by all that visitation to that area. Providing washrooms at the top of the canyon, so that's something that that was identified in the master plan as well as by the focus group, and then also in the surveys that were conducted on site in previous seasons. Implementing furnishings and fixtures at the top of the canyon, and that just relates to that increased or ongoing improvements to just day use amenities, so potentially more picnic shelters, that type of thing at the top of the canyon. Encouraging private sector opportunities that ensure a reasonable return on investment for the county, attracting target markets to the canyon, and collaboratively developing a paid parking passport with other sites in the region. And of course, that would require further discussion with other stakeholders and nearby organizations. So that's again, wanted to just present that as a starting point and just bring that forward for council's discussion.
Okay. I have just one question to start, maybe. Have we had any conversations around that parking passport with other local operators?
Not to date, no.
Okay.
No.
I know we have talked about it in the past, like when we were implementing our own paid parking, and just wondered. So we haven't gone forward there.
No.
Okay.
No.
So what's the thoughts? Everybody's gotten very quiet now. Yeah, Councillor Phobes.
Just because I'm not in the know of it, who was the focus group? Like, where did they come from?
Yep, for sure. So the focus group, that was presented at the April 20th, 2021 council meeting there. So that included community members. There was a third-party facilitator who was hired to facilitate that focus group discussion. So that included residents from around the county as well as stakeholders. So there was a representative from the Terrell Museum, and representative from the town of Drumheller, and then a representative from a private business operator nearby the canyon too. Yep. And that report can certainly be provided as well, but all of that was, presented, yes. And then also representatives from members of council. We had Reeve Whitstock and Councillor McGee, and then Kneehill County Administration as well participated to provide those different perspectives.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Phobes.
Sorry. So, I liked the Horseshoe Canyon. I'm just not and this is just me, this is a personal thing. If we're gonna own it, can we make it more to the colors of the county? Because right now, when I look at it, I feel like it's not what represents that actual canyon. When I went there on a tour last year, when we first got onto council, I was amazed at how beautiful it was. I just think that if you're gonna own it, make it more like the county, then it should be more with the colors that are, not the exact colors here, but the colors that are representing the county itself.
Right. Did you want to speak to, here I can go back to, I'll just jump back. So yeah, so this is something that we have in the signage that's on site currently. So there is that, it's the same font in that, and that logo look there, but it does fall more in line with what the current organization colors are there. You wanna?
Yeah, I think, did I see an example that had more of the county colors in it? I don't recall. So with the graphic artists, and again, I wasn't part of the graphic design process for this specific logo. I was part of the graphic design process for Explore Kneehill. The feedback we received when we did the Explore Kneehill is the colors that are in our corporate logo are in very, very, very modern. So to evoke an emotion of a historic site, it's very difficult to include those colors, and that's why, at least on the Explore Kneehill side, they decided to go more complementary colors as opposed to the colors themselves. When we look at the scene in the logo, if you put, I mean, it could go back to a graphic artist for consideration. The blue might be okay, but you definitely wouldn't want like the green or something in there. So that's why they went complementary, so that it kind of just aligns with everything that's already happening in the county.
Just go back to the other slide. If I look at the picture there, I just like those colors that are in that one as opposed to just the one solid dark color. In the, yeah, do you know what I'm saying?
Councilor Pederco. Is yours still on?
It's all good. I hear what you're saying there. The more colours, the more cost. And even if it was some more of the bluey greens just in the Kneehill County part on the bottom or something, like I'd like to see it come back to us with some options. If you just go to the next picture there, Cheryl. Like this, it stands out to me. This is bad. This is bad land. Not bad. It's bad land. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry. But down the bottom, the Kneehill County does not jump out at me. Like Horseshoe jumps out at me. And I like a little bit of the change in the font with the C and the O and a few things in the canyon. But the Kneehill doesn't jump out at me, but it's got to blend in when the time comes. And they're trained to do that, whoever you hire. But I'm all for, we got to do it sooner than later.
Councilor Christie.
Sitting here, my thought is that that logo was from a bag of horse feed. I want it on a bag of candy. So I'd like to see some more color. The tops of the hills, a shade of green, and the Kneehill County could be just a badge in the corner or something. But we spend a lot of money on the Kneehill logo. We should be using it.
Councilor McGee.
We could look at it slightly different. First off, for the councilors who don't know, on Laserfish, we have the Horseshoe Canyon presentation that the focus group did, so we could look through their slides. And I just pulled it up, and they used one picture of the Kneehill County welcomes you signs that we see at our borders everywhere, and we have Canadian Badlands on it now. I would love to see that very sign just when you turn right off the highway, when you turn right in, so you see that you're coming into Kneehill County right there, and then instead of the Canadian Badlands, you put whatever we decide is the Horseshoe Canyon logo underneath it. But to me, that would be very impacting, and if we could maybe even have a couple smaller ones that do say the same things as you head down your path, but so we're using both logos on that item, but let's just have the very same size we see at all the other boundaries.
Okay.
So just for clarification, potentially through Mike, this work was done in 2017, so we will have to procure another graphic designer to come in, potentially the same graphic designer. We will be incurring a cost to rework these logos again. So that may have to be a budget consideration to come back to council as a request. I'm not sure.
Through you, Deputy Reeve, it's something we'd have to look at. We'd have to gather some quotes and then see if we could absorb that within existing budget or not. If we could absorb that with within some of the work planned or the budget associated with work at Horseshoe Canyon, then that's something admin could just embark upon. If we looked at that and felt that there was a deviation needed, or depending on the amount, then we might have to come back, but we can do that assessment.
Okay, can you just go to the T-shirts themselves?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't object, again, I'm old and conservative in my approach, and so I don't object to what's on those T-shirts, and the only reason I brought it up earlier was there's no Kneehill branding on there.
Yeah.
And so I think that the people who make these designs tend to know how to mix and match colors and whatever, but I was just referring earlier to the fact that if we're going to own it, we own it. And we need to make sure that people are aware. Like the articles that you showed us, one talked about the Badlands in Alberta. Well, they're the Badlands in Kneehill County, which is also in Alberta, but it's Kneehill County, right? And the other article didn't refer necessarily to Kneehill County either, just referred to Horseshoe Canyon. And so we need to start making that really obvious that it is Kneehill County as opposed to Alberta generic or whatever, so. So that like, I don't mind the way those shirts look, I just would like to see the Kneehill on there, right?
Absolutely.
And whether it's our logo specific or whether it's just Kneehill County, right? In some way, shape, or form, I think that based on what we've been talking about in terms of branding, we're going to show our ownership of it, and B, we're going to identify the location, right? Any other comments on colors, branding, and all of that? Yeah, just Councillor Cunningham? I'll come to you.
So just, everything always comes down to money, unfortunately. So I'm just curious, like, is the goal of this, like, obviously, we're wanting to promote Horseshoe Canyon and Kneehill County, but I know it's really hard, like, for example, like the Cruise Night Committee, like, they do up the T-shirts, you always end up with leftovers, you don't have the right sizes. I just want to know, like, is it a break-even point? Is it going to be a cost to the county? Or, I just think it's important to know, like, is there going to be a cost to our ratepayers for this?
No, for sure, and thank you for that question, Councillor Cunningham. So with this being one of the recommended strategies from the focus group to consider first, the thought was that by incorporating it as part of the ongoing pilot project, that would be that kind of lower input cost without that kind of longer term commitment. So a lot of the strategies that have been recommended by the focus group, I would say, like in terms of attracting target markets, promoting the site for future investment or partnership with other, partners there, or private industry, that the brand would be that kind of, they would hinge on having that brand in place there. And because this was one of the strategies to start with, to try first. The thought was that this could be included as part of the part of the pilot project at a lower scale, see what the uptake is, because this is not something that we've tried before at this site. So that would be, the thought would be that would be included as part of the ongoing pilot, and see what it is. We don't have data at that site currently with regard to this specific type of initiative in terms of selling branded items. It's not something that's been tried before. So that's why we'd like to start with this as part of that pilot and see.
Okay, Councillor McGee.
Just to enhance what Shelby said, as part of the conversation when I was on the task force, what we saw was we wanted to generate cash flow for Kneehill County, so it's costing us less to have Horseshoe Canyon. Right now, it's a lot of output costs. And so what kind of easy things can we do? That doesn't mean building a building or those types of things that cost a lot of money to even get there. So that was the concept, both with paid parking and with the merchandise, that eventually it would be creating revenue that's above and beyond cost. That was where the dream came from. And then I asked Carolyn to bring up the picture I was suggesting, but that's what I was trying to talk about in case I wasn't clear. So remove the Canadian Badlands and put the Horseshoe Canyon underneath for the one that goes into Horseshoe Canyon.
Okay, any other, we beaten up the branding side of things?
So just for my own clarification then, branding as you see it today is on hold until this council sees variations of the brand that was presented to you, and we move forward procuring a graphic artist to come in and relook at the work. Is that the recommendation that's coming forward? That of course has to come back to council, but is that what the way that conversation is headed right now?
Councillor Penner.
It's a shame to say, yes, we'd like you to come back, because we're in the season, right? We've opened up, and
I don't think there'll be any t-shirts this year if we're bringing it back. I just want to throw that out there to be clear with council.
yeah, but I think you need to bring it back to us as soon as possible. We're ready for next season.
Okay.
Is that the overall direction that we're giving? Councillor McGee.
I agree with Councillor Penner. We do need to do that, and I'm fully behind it. I do want to see the pace on these ideas a little bit more rapid than we've had since the task force was here. I'm a little bit frustrated that we're not ready for this season. And so I need this to be a priority to be acted on. in my mind.
Reeve Whitstock.
Well, thanks very much for the presentation. I think the shirts, the T-shirts as they are, would be fine if we put Kneehill County on a shoulder or something like that. We're already branded as Kneehill County, so if we just put that on a shoulder, we can go ahead with those T-shirts and just see what the uptake is. In my view, we're ready to produce these T-shirts, as long as there's something on there that says Kneehill County. And it doesn't matter if it's on the shoulder or if it's below or whatever, I don't really care. But if we're gonna try to promote it, let's shoot something out there, and that's my view. Because I don't really, and we can always change it. I mean, this could be a collector's item in 20 years.
Version 1.
Version 1, yeah. 2.0 could be different, but just let's give it a go and see what we get, in my view.
And just before I go to Councillor McGee, I just want to reiterate, my whole point with regard to the T-shirt was just add Kneehill County. It doesn't have to be our logo, it just have to add Kneehill County. That was my whole point. If we're going to claim ownership, then let's claim ownership. And so in my mind, if underneath that, it just said Kneehill County, Alberta, whatever you wanted to put on there, I'm good with that. And I agree with with Reeve Whitstock that it would be a shame to miss the opportunity if we could do a pilot with the existing design, and that was agreeable with the group. Councillor McGee.
I just wanted to say I'd much prefer that idea for sure. And like we said, we'll find out and we can tweak the logo for next year if we want to, but to miss doing it this year, I think would be a shame. Yep.
And something to add too around the shirts, so that's featuring like a more simplified version of the logo, and so then we could bring back different options around that kind of overall one that has the full, the full logo with the canyon features there and that, so there could be other options brought back around that, but it wouldn't change what the, what the font is, what the logo is that's already captured on site in that interpretive signage. So that more, the more stylized, I guess, the more, just Horseshoe Canyon, that would, that could likely stay the same, or it may change, so.
Councillor Penner.
And one thing with T-shirts too, they're not dated. You know what I mean? There's no year, so we can carry them forward if we have to, but hopefully not.
If they become a collector's item, I'll bring my grandchildren this summer and we'll have to pick them up. Any other comments? Councillor McGee.
A little bit in the weeds, but we also talked a lot about safety and people not realizing how hot it is. So maybe some of the merchandise could reiterate caring for that, whether we have water bottles with it or hats available for that, sunscreen with the label on, I don't know, but something that reinforces pay attention to the sun would be a great second item to have.
Okay, so are we prepared to go forward with a pilot project on T-shirts for this year, or are we not? With just some slight adjustment and identification of Kneehill County. What's the thought? Reeve Whitstock.
I would like to see us go ahead with some sort of branded shirt with Kneehill County on it. That being said, where would we market these? Like, do we have a place there that, a sea can with a swamp cooler in front of it? I don't know, like.
So yeah, so the thought, to your question, Reeve Whitstock, the plan would be to have those, marketed on site. We'll have that parking booth that's currently being constructed for our staff there, and then as well, there's been potential interest is also from third-party operators too. So something that we could promote on site there, and then again, part of that ongoing pilot and seeing what the opportunities are out there to.
So it could be marketed through the little kiosk confectionery booth or whatever that the campground has there.
Could be a potential, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm good with, let's get going, let's get something done. Be nice to have a washroom there, but
Well, that is in the suggested priority list that we can move into discussion on.
Well, we're still hung up on branding. We haven't talked about branded toilet paper yet, but. Councilor McGee, you had another comment? Oh, Jerry? Jerry, you have to turn your mic off.
I'm curious about the third-party concept. How does that look as far as rewarding that? Are we going to be advertising, asking specific? Or because, yeah, there will be public kickback on how that's rolled out.
I believe at this time, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, this may have to be a conversation that goes in camera as there is specific third-party interest that we cannot discuss.
To that point, it depends on what nature you want to go in there. What we're balancing is staff, and there is, and I think the point that is being made, there is an opportunity for a partnership with a third party that exists out there, and that administratively we're suggesting we explore that. Just one, again, you're working with a third party. It's also tracing back to having wanting to make sure that what we're doing out there is not necessarily competing with private interests that are out there. So we want to be, we're trying to look for ways that we can be complementary with private development around that site, and not necessarily be in competition with it.
And when we look at something like merchandise, it's really a way for us to maintain the ownership of the brand while wholesaling it, where a third party can then profit because they're the ones doing the input, the work into selling it. So we make a profit off the wholesale, they make a profit off the retail.
Okay, so where are we at? What's the consensus? Are we prepared to move forward with the pilot project on some branded merchandise? Okay, Councillor Cunningham?
So, yeah, I'm just a question in terms of budget, like, are we just giving carte blanche, like, just go spend, you know, the sky, or like, I'm just curious, like, what, if we have a budget for this, or what, you know, and again, it kind of goes back to that price point too, like, are we hoping to get our money back, are we subsidizing a portion of that, just kind of curious about that.
So that's something that could then, specific budget ask could then be brought forward to the next council meeting potentially. Yeah, that would be the plan there around what that specific ask is.
And the tension is revenue. The intention is absolutely revenue. It's something that we want to do to earn revenue to help maintain the site.
One of the things, the intent of a committee of the whole meeting is to have a free-ranging discussion, and then hopefully administration gets an idea of the gist of the direction, and then they come back with a more formalized request. So it's good to get all of those things out on the table today. Reeve Whitstock.
Yeah, I think what we're gonna have to do is try to find out what blank T-shirts are gonna be worth, what's it gonna cost to put our logo on these. I know with the supply chain issues in China, the way it's at, because obviously these T-shirts will be coming from China. If you want high-end stuff, you could probably get high-end stuff, but then you're not gonna put a $30 T-shirt on a 6-year-old. I mean, I wouldn't, but, well, that's true. But yeah, I think some sort of a cost proposal, I'm not exactly sure what we would be looking to make on it, but.
I think the whole idea, though, is to get the concept. Are we okay with the concept? And then it's up to administration to bring back an actual proposal of what it might look like, hard and fast. And so if we're prepared to say, yes, we're interested in seeing branding on some kind of merchandise for the canyon for this summer, then I'm assuming that Ms. Buchanan and Ms. Sherwick would take that back and through administration would come back to us at a council meeting with a proposal on how we would go forward.
Yes.
Mr. Hogan.
So through you, Deputy Reeve King, to that end, I think the motion that administration would be recommending to council then would be that that committee of the whole recommend that council consider a branding program for Horseshoe Canyon. And that would be enough to give us a direction to come back to council with. And I think what you'd see in the short term is related specifically, if I'm hearing the conversation correctly and assuming that it's approved or the motion is carried, that we would come back really quickly with kind of the cost around the T-shirts for council's formal approval there. And then you'd see a bit of a, not stretching out a long, long time, but you'd see a longer process there in terms of the actual brand itself, because that's not going to be, that's not a 7-day project.
Okay, Councillor Cunningham.
Just one more quick thing, and I know, just following up on Reba Stock's comments, I would like to see too, like, I know the price is always sometimes higher locally, but I really would like to see us option it out locally too, and we can compare like whether it is China or Kneehill County. I just would like to give our locals a crack at it as well.
Okay. Would someone care to make that motion on behalf of the Committee of the Whole? Councillor McGee.
I'd like to make the motion. Mike articulated so well.
Okay.
Do you
So
remember it?
the motion would be that the Committee of the Whole recommend to council to consider a branding program for Horseshoe Canyon.
Yes,
I'm putting words in your mouth, but
that's exactly right there, Carolyn. Thank you. Yep.
yep. Okay, so the motion is Councillor McGee moved that the Committee of the Whole recommend to council to consider a pilot branding program for Horseshoe Canyon for 2022. We clear on the intent? And we understand that that'll come back as a more formal request with a lot more detail. Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. So there's a lot of other things that were on that priority list, and I already heard one mentioned earlier.
We know what number 1 is now.
Okay, I have a request for us to take a recess, so we'll take a recess for at least So
Can you just bring that?
what's next? Do you want to put your priority list back up, please?
Awesome, there it is. Okay. Yeah, so going back to this, so thank you for that on the brand and logo. As the first prioritization of, the first strategy that was prioritized, the next one being establish a voluntary Friends of Horseshoe Canyon group. So that would be something that would be then included in the budget for 2023 discussions.
Okay, so can you just sort of flesh that out a little bit more, perhaps? Or-
For sure. So that would be, again, it would likely be establishing the group, inviting, community members and stakeholders to be a part of that. And then the budget dollars would go towards any of marketing of that, and then hosting probably a few events a year is what kind of the initial thoughts would be on that. But of course, any formal presentation on that would come forward as part of budget deliberations.
So, since we have two of the focus group members here, can you just help us? What did the focus group see as the purpose for this Friends of Horseshoe Canyon? Just the idea of fundraising or cleanup, or what kind of things were in the thinking? Or Shelby, you were
Yep.
on that as well, so
can speak to
since
that,
they've
yes.
drawn a blank,
Yeah.
do you want to?
No, there was a number of just ideas around that. So some discussion had been that there are other park sites where there are more of a stakeholder group, where then those stakeholders are presented with kind of a year-end presentation of what has taken place at that site over the year. And then as well, it could be a voluntary, just similar to how some park sites have volunteers who do clean up at the site, certain days of the week, or provide that sort of interpretive experience. So similar in a way to what the parking team is doing on site now, it would be looking at a potential extension of that, but just having someone, what we've seen at other park sites is where they're kind of roaming throughout the site as well, providing that information and about the site to visitors, so.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Penner.
I think it's a great idea, and you might find some retired neighbors or local residents that would like to do this. They're passionate about the grounds and the formations and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is a great idea, that we should put it out there and see what kind of feedback we get back, because I do think there's people that have retired and are prepared to promote this area.
Okay, Reeve Wittstock.
I think one of the things that was looked at was more of a, how the heck do you want to put this? But it was if there's any issues there, that these people would be able to mix among the community and say, okay, look, is there something that we can do different than what's happening now if there becomes issues? I don't know what the issues were. Well, of course, with same issues as everything, garbage, flying paper, that kind of stuff, but it'll be interesting to see who would volunteer for this position. I think there probably would be some local adjacent landowners, probably the campground, possibly. But I think it'd be nice to have just some outside influence, and then they can can't make decisions, but they can help where we need help. I don't know, is that kind of, sort of?
Yeah,
Councillor McGee.
that's what I understood to be. There was two components to this. We had a few people that were on the task force that brought to light that the neighbors in around the area were quite put out that they haven't been part of how things are happening, and that a lot of large tourist spots like that do consider the neighbors that are being affected by that. And so the one recommendation was possibly having, like you said, a season end thank you barbecue for all our residents in the area who's interested in coming, just to say thank you, have some fun at the canyon yourselves, but a private gathering. But the other concept then was also we need ambassadors for this project. This is a huge, great thing that we have as Kneehill County, and I think it's very hard to promote Kneehill County if the Kneehill County residents aren't promoting it. And so how do we make our residents part of this as the owners of this? This isn't ours, it's theirs, is kind of where the conversation was. And the idea was, by Friends of the Horseshoe Canyon, we have other people talking for it, looking for it, and free labor. And it could be as much as inviting the 4-H club or the grad classes to come, or, you know, find some community involvement in the care for it under that concept. The part that makes me hesitate, of course, is the manpower to run a volunteer group under our needs. Definitely would have to be looked at.
Okay, any other comments? I guess in my mind, I like the idea of ambassadors. I like the idea of people who are willing to help, you know, just help other visitors understand what the canyon's all about, and willing to help with bottom canyon cleanup or whatever might be required. In the back of my head, I think about you would need a very clear mandate for this group, and some kind of structure under which they would operate, and that would be key to how successful or otherwise this is going to be.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so am I getting direction from council that this is something that we want to be considered, and that we're looking for administration to bring back a more detailed concept? I see a lot of heads nodding. Okay. Yeah. So directionally, do you want us to make a motion then to give you permission to go forward there?
Or to Mr. Hogan on
Mr.
this one.
Hogan.
Yeah.
So through you, Deputy Reeve, is the, you know, when we talk about the prioritizations and all of those here, and I know there was a specific one that was the basis there, if you're looking at creating a formalized group, then I think recommending some specific direction would be good there. For most of these, what we're doing as administration is bringing them to you and saying, hey, here's what we're recommending. If you're good with these, and we'll start populating like the 3 and 5 year forecasts and financial plans with the dollar figures attached. So for a lot of these that are more longer term, that's where that discussion will actually occur. We're just looking for council's endorsement that you want to see those in there. It doesn't mean you're necessarily full on approving them, just that they're in there for discussion, and you can weigh them against the entire picture of where the county's resources are going. So if there's anything that's in here that you're saying, well, we have no interest in that, then we could take that out. If you're good with this, then we start populating the other financial plans and documents to reflect that for your future debate. If you're looking at something that's very specific that you want to see move forward quickly, so if that is something like the resident group, or if that is something like that, then I think some specific direction there would be good.
Okay, Reeve Whitstock.
I think it'd be important to have this group, but someplace along the line, and really quick along the line, is we have to decide what this group is supposed to do. I mean, if you're gonna put it out there that, well, what we need help with is cleaning the bottom of the canyon, I don't know how many volunteers you're gonna get. But if it's to be an ambassador, history of the area, just to speak with people as they descend or come out of the canyon, just to be available to answer questions, I think something like that, you'd probably have some people volunteer. But I don't believe you're gonna have too many people volunteer for the work side of it. But that being said, while you're down in the bottom of the canyon and talking to people, you tell them, well, there's the garbage cans over there, and oh yeah, I'll pick this up. And I think it's more of a conversational group, and then we can work our way further into it. But need something that people will actually want to join up and say, I'm part of this, but I'm not working my butt off to be part of this.
Councillor Christie.
Part of that focus group, or not the focus group, but I'm gonna call it a society, is to somewhat take ownership of what's there and help us make decisions of how it grows. And if you get local support, it's way easier to promote than it is if we got opposition all the time. So I'm thinking of the hall in Trochu, where my hall board is a society that are pretty much dedicated, not because they want a hall, they want a community. So that's why they're involved. And whether we could, not the cleanup part, but to give us some direction of where they want to go as a community.
Okay, so I think you're getting an endorsement to say that's something that would be considered going forward in the future.
Great.
I saw a lot of heads nodding earlier, so. We're on to something other than outhouses. So, again, this is something that's been talked about a lot. It would come with a fairly significant cost, but as a group, are we supportive of the idea of changing what's happening there? So any comments or questions or thoughts?
Or pictures?
Councillor Penner.
Thrown out there, it is an area that we really need to touch on. Decent bathrooms and bringing people back. It can't be outrageous, but they've got to be a decent functioning bathroom.
I think that's one of the things that we've gotten a fair amount of feedback on too, was about sort of the washroom facilities that are there. Ms. Buchanan.
As I spoke earlier prior to discussing our priorities and strategies, there is funding available right now for tourism. This is one of those specific items that there may be potential to get some funding support. It's never going to cover the entire cost. If we could get, 30%, 50%, that would be a perfect world. But as funding comes available, this may be one that we can get some support for.
If someone's willing to give us money, we're always interested, right? So what's the thoughts? Is this something that we want to keep on the burner and keep moving forward in one way, shape, or form? Councillor Forbes.
Like, how big of a washroom are we talking here? Like 1 stall, 2 stalls? Well, I mean, to wash your hands for sure, I get that, but like, are you talking like 4 per side? Like, that's just my.
Yeah. I believe that it was, actually, I have one of the,
All the documents up here for everything for the last 5 years.
There was some concept discussed earlier, and of
Yes.
course, because weren't on council at that point, it's fair to give you that information. The idea was that there would be something quite different than what's there now, but not necessarily gold-plated.
No.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're going to do it, you got to do it a reasonable size. No, we don't want to expand on it.
No.
No. And we're not going to have 1 or 2 either, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, in that
so-
4 per side type range, there's just a photo there of just kind of one of the concepts of, so just an upgrade from the current situation that's in place there. But again, and that would be something that would be looked at with multiple options as it would be presented formally.
I think, sorry.
Reeve Whitstock.
I think what's pictured there on the top left corner would be nice if we had a bit of a foyer. I know a foyer inside washrooms doesn't necessarily the most pleasant place to hang around. But if we can figure something out there where you could have a little bit of a space for information, whether that be pamphlets, maybe even sales of the t-shirts. I know that it's going to include extra manpower, but maybe we could have somebody. Oh, that would be something, yeah. Friends of the group. But I think we have to have a decent facility. The facility that's there, I would not say take it out, because this bathroom will not be open if there's no one there to monitor, in my view. because that's when shit happens.
Councillor Cunningham, you had a comment?
I just have a few questions. So if memory serves me correctly, was it around 500,000 for this facility? Was it earmarked? 750. 750,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so there were a number of different service levels regarding an upgraded washroom facility were presented previously. So yeah, around that facility would be at around that 750. And then, of course, that was presented a few years ago now. So likely with the increase of cost of materials and all of that, would be looking at a greater increase. And that hasn't been formally looked at for since it was last presented. So we don't have the updated cost, but that's what the value was when it was last presented.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Cunningham? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so like you're discussing, I mean, we all know what's happened with costs in the last couple of years. So I mean, we'd be inching pretty darn close to $1 million. I know for myself, I'm not an outdoor washroom person. And when we went there in the fall, I actually didn't mind that washroom. So that says a lot for that washroom when I'll go in it and be, so, the maintenance goes with it, yeah.
Yeah.
Just for me and from what I'm hearing from my ratepayers, I in good conscience could not at this point justify spending that kind of money when we, you know, kind of have just gone through the budget process and we've kind of said to our ratepayers, things are tight, oil and gas is down. Yeah, you know, maybe it's something, you know, a couple of years down the road, if there's funding that comes available, but that's where I would have to know, you know, what we would be able to be subsidized for that, because I just couldn't justify that myself.
Reeve, Woodstock.
Guess a question to you, Mr. Hogan. Have we got water on site? We must have water because the campground's got water, correct?
There, to the specific areas on site, I might have to defer that one, but there is water very close.
Okay, so we would have to find some place to discharge the gray water? And
Yeah.
taking a field would probably not suffice. I guess I'm getting too deep in the weeds here, never mind.
Yeah, I think,
To get into an ATCO shelter, kind of ATCO washrooms, they're what, about 250 grand?
And I haven't looked at costing for that style recently, but that would likely be, yeah, in that ballpark.
I think that the direction for that administration's looking for here today, or what we're proposing, is, you know, we don't, as county and as a council, we don't need to determine the exact washroom today. Is we just need to know if that's a priority. That and what we're hearing is that that's going to be a higher priority than a number of these other things. And so what we would do administratively with that is when we go to populate those into the 3-year and 5-year financial forecasts, we know that that one should be hitting sooner rather than later, right, is when we do that prioritization. When that, like I said before, you're not necessarily approving all of these today, but you're telling us to populate the future financial plans with them. When those plans come back, you get to debate those against all the other priorities that the county has and what happens there. And you might take some out, you might move some back some years, you might move some forward some years, right? Depending on what that looks like. But I think the longer term is, you know, this isn't the green light to just run in and build washroom facilities here today. There's got to be a further discussion about what do you want to see out there? What brand do you want to, like, how do you want it to tie in? You know, when we talked about the branding and the experience and stuff like that, is you might choose something that's on the cheaper end that's functional and nothing else. You might spend a bit more money on something that's both functional and aesthetically ties into the site, right? And gives a perception there. Those are all going to be things that you can debate in the future when we bring back more information on what that'll specifically cost. Because if you're just looking at something that's very basic versus something that's more stylized with a foyer area and stuff like that, that debate still rests in front of you.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that if there is opportunity to get funding that covers 10, 20, 30, 50%, whatever it happens to cover, that's money that doesn't necessarily come out of our budget. And so if we're debating spending 100% of what it would cost as opposed to say 70% of it, what it would cost, then maybe there might be more receptivity to that concept. Reeve Woodstock, you want to make a comment?
I guess my comment is yes, washrooms are going to be necessary, and maybe not this year, well, obviously not this year, but down the line, whether it be 2, 3, 4, or 5 years down the line, we have to get something there that we can be proud of, because right now I can't be proud of what we got there. And whether it brings more people or not, probably not, but it is an experience that, well, one of the comments is the facility, washroom facilities there are horrible. Yeah. And we hear that, and we have to fix that.
Councillor Penner.
Just referring back to what Jacqueline said too, to be ready when these grants and funding are available. So you've got the go-ahead for me on this project, and it's one of those things that we need to be ready if ever funds come available.
Councillor McGee.
We are trying to promote Kneehill County through this amazing site. If my experience is I can't trust that my child is safe from germs by needing a washroom, I'm not coming to your other sites. And so I know it sounds like a big expense, but I think we need to decide what's best for Kneehill County, not what's only best for this site. And so when you look at the whole picture, I still see a lot of value for that purpose as well. I think, yeah, washrooms needs to be sooner than later as well, whatever, of course, budgeting, but between grant possibilities and promotion aspects, this is the face of what we're showing, and so it needs to be something that promotes the rest of us. I see it no different than the funding we give to other recreation throughout all kinds of things. We spend that kind of money easily on our hockey rinks and swimming pools and those kinds of things through our ICF process, and I see that this is appropriate through that kind of thinking.
And not only through the ICF process, but through our own arena in Torrington, we've spent in excess of $1 million in the last few years. So, Reeve Woodstock.
Well, I look at what's happened at Keever's Lake over the, 10 years? I mean, what was there to start with, and yes, we didn't want to spend money, but look where it's been, where it's come to now. It's a go-to spot. It's booked solid. Yeah, we're probably not making a pile of money on it, but it does provide recreation for our residents and for people outside the county. And they go there not to go swimming, but that being said, it's a, if Superman can freeze it and put out a fire, that's something. I think it's expensive to get started, but once you get started, then things seem to fall together and things turn out really well in the end.
Okay, so again, I think there's permission to move forward with a clear understanding that there'd be a lot of detail that's needed and questions that are going to have to be answered before we would move forward. So, but I think it's been clear in terms of the visitor responses to the site and the information from the focus group and others that, the tourism master plan, the Horseshoe Canyon plan is all of those have indicated that something needs to be done there. So I think you probably have direction to say, don't take it out of your
Check mark. Thank you.
Okay. There's a number of other things there. Furnishings and fixtures, private sector opportunities, attracting additional targeted markets, and the paid parking passport. So comments on any of those, or thoughts, discussion?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry,
It's
Councillor
okay.
Penner. I was looking the other
One
way.
time I didn't butt in, sorry. When it comes to finishing fixtures, are you thinking, or are you hearing from the people that have come there that they would like to see more shade up the top when they
Yes.
sit? Okay, so I was wondering, what are you hearing there?
Yeah, so and that is something that we have, plan to kind of implement on an ongoing basis as well. But the overall kind of strategy for that is that expansion of just other sort of smaller day use areas around the edges of the canyon. But yes, certainly shade comes up a lot, both on the bottom and on the top of the canyon too. And that's certainly something just in terms of visitor experience and visitor safety. That's why I have that as a priority there for sure.
Okay, Reeve Whitstock.
I think when we were talking with the focus group, they weren't looking at putting something permanent in at the
No.
immediately, but something like a sprung tent structure that has walls. I mean, it'd be nice if it's raining and somebody's caught in the rain that they can, well, whatever.
Yes.
But when the weather is nice, there can be picnic tables up underneath there. There can be just something, not permanent, but something that's functional. Maybe not the round tarp shed kind of a thing, but something with a little design to it, and just to give people someplace to sit and see the view. I think is where that focus group was headed.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor McGee.
I agree with you, Reeve Woodstock, and it also was around, there are some people who aren't capable of walking all the way down to the canyon, but would like to kind of watch out as people in their family are going through it. So an opportunity for there to be a shade cover and still be part of their family going down the canyon, even though they can't personally get down themselves. So that's also part of the aspect of it. I wanted to talk, if we are ready to change, the passports, I'm really hesitant that at one time we were talking about passports that work together with the Drumheller Valley type stuff. And I would really rather see it's only about Kneehill County stuff. So I think the feel for that has changed considerably since these conversations started. I'm just throwing that out there, not sure.
Okay, any other comments? Thoughts? Councillor Cunningham.
I agree with what Councillor McGee said, and I just, when we go to the attract target markets, like what I've heard and what I believe is we do want to try to encourage people that are down there to come our way, because I had spent some time on Google reviews. A must stop when traveling between Drumheller and Calgary. I've been to Drumheller, but never here. So I think like we want to see the benefit come back to Kneehill County. So whether people are going there, they're gonna come to Kirk's Alpaca Farm, they're gonna go to Country Roads Bakery, they're gonna come to Keever's. Like, we just really want the focus to come north. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Well, really, Horseshoe Canyon for a lot of people is the first contact point with Kneehill County. And that's why my question earlier about other promotional materials that would point them further north into the county, and what other things are attractive within Kneehill. And so we want to promote the canyon, yes, but we also want to promote all the other things that are within Kneehill that would interest people, right?
Oh, sorry. So we can certainly remove that item from this list for sure, if that's not identified to be a priority. I think that in the focus group discussion around that, it was specifically related to the sites that have pay parking. So looking at whether it be like a reduced, like if someone buys, a pass for the day versus, paying separately at each site that does charge for parking. So that was kind of where those discussions originated from. But certainly those would be directed, not upwards into into Kneehill County specifically. They would be more in the Drumheller Valley. So we could remove that one if that's something that council would like to see.
So one of the things for me about Horseshoe Canyon is the fact that there's really not a lot of development in the bottom. Like once you're down there, it's just a natural and wild area, sort of. And so I wouldn't be really strongly in favor of seeing much development in the bottom. But do we when we're promoting Horseshoe Canyon on our website and stuff, do we talk about a list of things to bring, like bring a hat, bring water, bring, all of those kind of things that are necessary? Think about hiking in a hot and dry spot, and especially when the sun's out.
I don't believe we have that on the website currently, but we can certainly include that. We do have that in signage that's on site,
Yeah.
just following some heat-related emergencies that visitors had experienced, so. But no, certainly we can include that in our just marketing materials that we have on the website.
And we can easily do that through Explore Kneehill as well, because we actually just did that exact post for Dry Island Buffalo Jump, so we can recycle the verbiage and do it for Horseshoe Canyon as well.
Councillor Penner.
I echo what Councillor King was mentioning there. I would prefer to see nothing at the bottom.
Okay.
We don't want to encourage them to be down there, and especially if there's a storm coming, because they need to get out of there ASAP to get out of that gumball. Otherwise, you're not coming out for a couple of days. So I would like to see the bottom, and halfway down anywhere left alone. Everything we do is on top when it comes to shade and that kind of stuff.
I was just going to comment, one of the cheapest shade structure is a tree, and so I certainly would encourage more plantings there, for sure. Reeve Whitstock.
Well, number one, I don't think we can put anything down there, according to the contract that we signed when we purchased. But
Yeah.
that was also one of the focus group's big items, is to keep that as natural as we possibly can. That doesn't mean you can't put walking paths down there. I think walking paths are a great idea. Keeps people off of the sensitive plants that are growing there, that have been growing there for a number of years. And I would, yeah, I think it's important that we leave the bottom the way it is, but we sure could develop some stuff on the upside, so.
Okay, other comments? Councillor McGee.
We haven't spoken to attract target markets to the canyon, and what I saw that being, if I remember correctly, I might be wrong, Shelby, but I understood that to be more that we find ways to promote to other groups, like tourism groups, get the buses to come out, those types of things. So how to maybe even target people coming out, spend an extra day. What activities could we have if we target that out? Maybe, you know, there'd be a guided walk for them. Those are all bigger things, I think, though. I don't think they're of this list, it's probably the bottom one of the list.
A lot of these destinations, like Horseshoe Canyon and things around Drumheller, like Horse Thief, or the boardwalk at, what is it, Machichi or somewhere, they're kind of like a half-day type event. So the key is to get them here, get them to stay here and spend some days here. And so there's a lot of things that are within Kneehill, Dry Island Buffalo, and all of those kinds of things where people could spend time. And so, you know, we need to promote the complete package, and if we can find a way, you know, through Explore Kneehill and all those other things to do that, then that's just to the advantage of ourselves and, of course, our partner municipalities who will benefit from that as well. So, Councillor Penner.
I was going to talk about the target market too, and I think where we advertise and stuff like that, and you guys do a great job of it, and through the Explore Kneehill, and if we got to hit the film industry or whatever, I think we continue to do what you were doing, because I found out about it. So I think you're doing a great job, and just expand on it.
Okay, any further discussion? Councillor Forbes.
It's more of a comment. When they're down there, do visitors understand that we have other sites that they can go to? Like,
Do you mean like other tourism
yeah,
sites
like,
in the
you
county?
know, when we went on our little tour,
Yes.
we went and stopped at the different ones. Or is there something down there that says that these other ones exist for people to go to? If that's a half a day, they can do another half a day here, right? They make a full day of it instead of just half.
So not currently in terms of signage, so that's just part of that training that we had talked about that we provided to staff, but there is just that large sign that Jacqueline was talking about that has the information around, it was previously the Canadian Badlands, so that's what we're talking about. That could be potential for replacing that, whatever that may look like, to include all the other sites within Kneehill specifically.
And when you, we spoke to the QR signage, so when you
Yes.
scan that QR code at Horseshoe Canyon, it populates a list on your phone that says bird watching, fishing, hiking, attractions, shopping, local foods, and that's all generated for the region, and including all of our municipal partners as well.
So when you talk about that, I assume that Swalwell Dam has been removed from the fishing list?
It is no longer a fishing site. However, we do have a private operator that we've included as a fishing site, so it is a campground. Yeah, there are 19 campgrounds on our list, including ours, each municipality is the private operators, and the ones that kind of zigzag the river valley.
Okay, good. Councillor Benner.
Back to Councillor Forbes there, we've talked about it numerous times about putting a big, and I thought it was there for some reason, but you know, the municipal map there with all these little dots on it, and I think you're just talking about putting it there. I think I brought it up years ago, it was to do with Newell County, I think it was, and that's the big map they had of their whole region. It just had the little stars on all the different things, so, which we could add to, so I thought it was already there, but it's great to hear that it's possibly coming, just because not everybody does the QR thing, so.
The signage that's currently there, so our Horseshoe Canyon map, just kidding.
Uh-oh. Are you, oh,
The main sign at Horseshoe Canyon. So there is a map there that at least gives you some, you know, your top destination sort of along the way. There's another sign that is off to the left when you're looking at that sign that is actually, I believe it would be safe to say, owned by Canadian Badlands.
yes.
Is owned by Canadian Badlands. As we know, it's no longer an entity because it was developed by Canadian Badlands. It shows the entire Badlands region, and I'm like the entire, right down to Lethbridge, Drumheller, Kneehill County, everything including. We're looking at potential for now reclaiming that sign, and if we can reclaim it, bringing it forward to do something more local. So more regional. It doesn't necessarily have to be branded Explore Kneehill, but make it, you know, instead of the entire southeast portion of the province, let's bring it up. You know, we may still include some of our outlying areas, but just really focusing it on the region. We do not have any authorization to move forward with that at this time. It's just conversations we're having. The sign itself, I think, is about 10 years old, so it's getting quite faded, and it's going to need redone at some point, so.
Councillor Benner.
Because this sign in front of me does not, what's the word, advertise Explore Kneehill. It to me, it advertised Explore the Drumheller Valley.
Yeah.
Yes, and that sign was replaced, the intent was to capture a lot of what was on the previous. There was a really old sign that was in place in that exact location prior to, so yes, that features a lot of those same sites that were on that previous one, so.
Councillor Benner.
To me, this is a priority to change this sign, to put more of Kneehill rather than the Drumheller Valley. I know we're partners and everything with the adjoining municipalities and that kind of stuff, but this really is not exploring Kneehill County to me.
Okay. Do I see some agreement with that? Yeah, I think you saw a fair number of heads going.
And just for my own clarification and for Shelby's, I wish we had a picture of the other one. It's quite a substantial sign. When you were out there, it's pole sign, so it's a number of poles. Oh yeah, you can, way in the distance behind the truck. If we did have the opportunity to make that something substantially more exclusive to the Kneehill region, would you still want to see this signage as a priority replacement as well? Okay.
I think it's about focus. Where's the focus, right? And so if our discussion, as I've been hearing it, seems to indicate that we're interested in promoting Kneehill County and our partner municipalities and the attractions that are here more so than the Drumheller Valley, then I think the answer would be yes, we probably, not to say we would necessarily want to completely remove any mention of
We
what
can't take the
might happen
Tyrell
to be
off,
there,
let's
but we do
just-
want to increase the you know, we do want to increase the focus on.
For sure.
Go ahead,
When I
Councillor
look at
Forbes.
this sign, the first word I see is Drumheller. The second word I see is Horseshoe Canyon, because it's just over here, right? But when I look straight at it, that's the one I notice the most.
Yep.
So,
Good point, front and center.
I'm not saying take them out, but maybe not make them so, hey, how you doing?
Shift it a little bit, just bring it.
Well, we need to acknowledge they're not going away and that there's a lot of attraction there, and a lot of people who are coming initially to Horseshoe Canyon, their end destination is somewhere in the Drumheller area. And all we're talking about is trying to shift that end destination more west and north than south and east. Councillor McGee.
I know that Jacqueline is well equipped to understand that, because that's also the person, I forgot the name of the person you were quoting earlier. He also talked about that to be sure to have your other points that are around you, so people see you're not that far. Since you're there, you're not that far to here. Since you're there, you're not that far to us. So be sure to, and I think you have lots of information on how to make that work in a way that puts us as the center, but that all these other great places can connect to us.
And it's tough. A tourist doesn't see borders. They don't know the difference between Drumheller and Kneehill County. They honestly don't care enough to even, you know, research that. What at the end of the day, when we look at tourism, we really have to consider priority number one is if somebody's going to drive an hour, they need to have 3 to 4 hours of activity when they get there. So when you look at our travelers coming from Calgary, you know, hour and a half. If they're coming from Edmonton, 2 hours, Red Deer again, an hour. And it's making sure that even if these assets are not ours, they increase our ability to maintain these tourists in our area for a prolonged period of time. So it's really just marketing what else you can do. If somebody's driving to the Royal Tyrrell Museum, they're not going to say, oh, I'm going to go to the Kneehill Museum instead. It's just not a realistic option. But they may say, hey, let's go to the Kneehill Museum as well. And that's what we really have to focus our attention on.
Councillor Cunningham.
I haven't been down in Drumheller much in the last little while, but I'm just curious, like, so down there, like, are they kind of promoting Horseshoe Canyon as well? Like, is like, while you're at the Tyrrell, like, head up to Horseshoe Canyon? Like, what's kind of going on there?
I can't speak for Royal Tyrrell. I can speak for Travel Drumheller. Absolutely. They absolutely were included in their promotional materials, and it's not just Horseshoe Canyon. They promote Orkney. We both promote Blériot Ferry. The new catalog that Travel Drumheller just released actually has a driving tour that goes substantially through Kneehill County up to Trochu and over. So they really, you know, we work very, very well with Travel Drumheller. They really understand that they might be the star, they might be the Eiffel Tower, but that there is a positive spin-off for all of us. So they're really very happy to help cross-promote, and in the same breath, we cross-promote them as well.
Councillor Forbes.
I guess when I think about Horseshoe Canyon, and just because I may be from the city, and I don't know that these other places exist, like when we went, was it Orkney? Where you guys were lifting refrigerators out of the. Do you like how I remember that?
We don't usually mention that in a
Right?
public forum.
We count that as a unique destination.
But I don't know if the people are aware, like, it's not that far of a drive from there to there. Are people aware that you can go there as well? That's what I mean when I say that sign. I see Drumheller. Of course, we want Drumheller to be included because they bring us business as well. But are the people that are going here understand that this drive is only another so many minutes away? Like, with this beauty, and the view is absolutely stunning there as well.
And I will say that having that, that sign there in place, though it does feature a lot of sites located in the Drumheller Valley, will oftentimes get a lot of questions from people. And so it's easy, it's nice to have that sign there to point to, yeah, actually, because they'll have questions and they're not always about, you know, specific sites in Kneehill County, but it's questions about their day. So it's about providing that positive visitor experience and that great customer service. So then we can point to the sign and say, yeah, and actually, if you're going on a driving tour, head up this way to Orkney Viewpoint, or this is where this is located, and you're only this many, you know, kilometers drive from here. So yeah, it's all part of that capturing those visitors' time for, you know, those longer itineraries.
Councillor McGee, did you have a comment you were going to make?
Councillor FOIP pretty much did. I just wanted to verify that we definitely want to work with these other groups and have that, and we don't want our conversation to confuse that, but you already addressed that, so.
Councillor Penner.
Yeah, no, I'm good. It's just that if they need the information, like, go and grab the brochure off the counter and show, okay, here's the map for, you know, that area or whatever. But when you drive into there and walk into that site, the first map I would like them to see is the Horseshoe is right in the middle, and then, you know, everything, yeah, so.
We're just shifting the focus. Shifting the focus is really what we're trying to do, right? Yeah. All right, any other comments on Horseshoe Canyon direction help for Sherwick and Ms. Buchanan? Oh, go ahead, Ms. Buchanan, go ahead.
I just want to ask a question of council. So we talked about taking collaboratively developed paid parking off, potentially moving attract target markets. I guess technically that'll make it at the bottom. Council's confident and happy with the priority order as they see it other than those two items. I would just like clarification around that.
Good? Councillor Forbes?
It's okay, sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Me personally, because the washrooms eventually will be something that we need, but I think in having the private, like establishing that, the people before the washrooms, like having people more visibly coming to it, along with the volunteer friends of the thing. Something that doesn't cost a ton of money, basically, is where I'm going for, until we can afford to do the bigger end items, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I don't even.
Well, it always comes down to dollars and cents, and it is about priorities. One of the things you'll find as a comment virtually from everybody who goes to the canyon is about washrooms. So it is a major focus. It has also been talked about in the tourism strategy, in the Horseshoe Canyon Master Plan. It's in the focus group on Horseshoe Canyon. We have been told over and over and over again here at the county about the washrooms at Horseshoe Canyon. So they are going to have to become an item at some point in time, whether that's in the near or more distant future. It is something that's not going to go away. A number of years ago, we set aside some money to address some of that issue related to the canyon. And like, if there's free dollars out there, then I'm going to be way more focused and interested than if there's not. But I think the understanding always is if it doesn't cost us anything, yeah, we're all on board. And so, but to your comment, Councillor Cunningham, and then Reeve Whitstock.
That's actually very interesting, and I guess I haven't been here long enough to know that, but I did spend quite a bit of time the last while on Googling Horseshoe Canyon, and there was, out of 400 or how many, one comment about washrooms, so it's interesting to see the different comments, like what you're hearing in person compared to like Google review. Like there's really, that is not the washrooms are not a concern at all in terms of Google reviews, so interesting, just the difference.
Reeve Whitstock.
And I've been on the Alberta travel site. Signage. Is there any way that we could put up, because right now there's just a touristy sign, Horseshoe Canyon, there's nothing there. Is there anything that we can put on the highway? I guess we would need their permission, but is there anything that would jump out at you on Horseshoe Canyon? Because I'm just reading this one here from somebody from the GTA. If you weren't looking for it, you would drive right past. There's nothing to indicate there's even a canyon there. And this was September of last year.
Yeah. Yeah, so currently we do have, I believe it's multiple signs going each way on Highway 9, but it is just those standard green, yeah, tourist signs, yeah. So not something that we have explored before, but something we can certainly look into, for sure.
Counselor Penner.
I like the idea that earlier Councillor McGee had about using our sign, just changing the Badlands thing, or what, like just changing that similar sign, similar layout and everything, to put that out there to make it stand out of some. Of course, you got to work with Alberta Transportation, but make it stand out.
Yeah.
There's some very distinct levels of signage that you're allowed through
Yes.
Alberta Transportation. Maybe 3 options that you have for tourism sites. So what we can do is just look at what signage is currently up and see if there's a different level that can be approved.
Reeve Whitstock.
I just thought those point of interest signs, would that be something that we could, I mean, you know, the ones that are just a carry-in, not that we need a carry-in there, but just something to identify the historical value of the place or something like that? Because that does draw people's attention, and it is a different style of sign.
Yeah.
Just throwing some thoughts out.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
So we're getting some comments about maybe better signage along the highway to divert traffic. Counselor Penner. Oh, somebody's mic on.
On mine.
There we go. When it comes to washrooms, and I know early on, they were terrible. It was a full-time job for the poor attendants and some of the
Still is.
downloading of the camper sewers and all that kind, it was not pretty. So we did hear quite a bit about it. To me, it is a priority. We need to move forward, be ready for grants when it comes to what, we can't keep beating at a dead horse, is to say we need to get it going here, when we've talked about this for some time now and put some funds aside. I would like to see it as a priority. Like, same where you've got it is fine, but I just think we just need to get the ball rolling on it. Yep. And of course, it's not going to be 100% through a grant. We're going to have to, which we've spoken about over the years, having to supplement it. Hope not as much as we may have in the past, but you just don't know that, so.
Counselor McGee.
I'm promoting the washrooms again. I know it's a hard one for our residents to understand the expense, and I really understand that. But we have to also look at the health and safety of our workers who have to clean that up regularly. We also have to look at what a lot of people do if they don't like the facilities. It's not good stewardship of the land necessarily. I'm sure you can catch it without me being too crass, but those are genuine concerns that as good stewards of the area, I just see that as an important part of caring for the canyon and caring for the people who are caring for the canyon.
So when you build a campground, or an arena, or a ball diamond, or whatever, any recreational facility, when's the last time you've gone to one of them and there hasn't been a washroom there? Washrooms are part of recreation, and they're a requirement. And so one of the realities of life is if we were to decide we're going to build a, I don't know, sports facility of some kind in Kneehill County, heaven forbid we ever did that, but let's say we decided that and we eliminated washrooms as part of the building plan. For one, health and safety and all those guys would be down your throats right away. In a way, this canyon is no different. It is a recreational property, and it requires the services that come with those properties. And eventually, we're going to have to do something to upgrade that. All we're saying is we want to leave it there. We want to take advantage of an opportunity should it come down the line where we might be able to get some grant funding. And the reality is at some point in time, the situation is going to change there. When that happens, we don't know, but maybe all of a sudden the province is going to come out in their wisdom and announce a bunch of funding for exactly that kind of thing. Do we want to be ready or not? And I liken it to kind of like the situation that Trochu Housing is in right now with their facility for seniors. They're ready. Should there be a funding announcement, they're going to be all over it. We need to be ready. And so this is just carrying on the regular business that we have to carry on in order to maintain a facility like that. So, Ms. Buchanan.
So just speaking from my economic development hat, understandably, it's a big expense to swallow when you can't necessarily relate what your income is going to look like to offset it. The simplest way that the county will potentially start reclaiming money on a project like this is through events and through film. Not all brides are going to be willing to rent a site where they know that they're going to be going into an outhouse with a wedding dress. So you're increasing the opportunity for some of those funding revenues because you'll be able to host larger or more frequent events out there where there is the opportunity for an income.
Oh, Councillor Hope, sorry.
No, it's okay. So when you're gonna think, if we're gonna talk about the washroom, do you have a site that would be beneficial to the long table, to the rental of, if you're gonna look in the future of these things, right? Are you gonna put it closer to that as opposed to over here?
Yeah, so there has been, just in previous presentations, and that's certainly, you know, something that would be brought back as part of a formal presentation, so different locations on the site, and that would be based on, you know, if there is something like pavilion space, as was presented originally in the Horseshoe Canyon Master Plan, or something like a permanent event space, certainly, so. Or if it makes sense to have it closer to where there may be those types of like the glamping yurts or something like that too. So yeah, there's been different sites explored, but nothing formally like in terms of having a study done of what would make the most sense to have it. So yeah, definitely different possibilities for siting, but not formally to this point. So.
If we ever got to the point where we're actually talking about spending the money, we'd have a pretty good idea where we're going to locate them, right? And
Then like, are the utilities able to get to the different sites if you were choosing a different site, like for water?
Yes.
It's not gonna be hooked up to electricity, right? You're gonna have lights through the roof?
So all of, yeah, again, just in terms of utilities and what amenities would be required, it's all just been in just the initial, just rough cost estimate stage at this point. It hasn't been explored in terms of formal proposals. So yeah, all of those details haven't been looked at to that level yet, but.
okay, so where are we at? We have a priority list. I think that the answer to your question earlier, Ms. Buchanan, is yes. We like the priority list, and I think the order that they're in. Are there other comments, or Councillor Christie?
I'd really like to know what's availability, and I want to be the first horse at the trough.
Well, and that speaks to readiness, right? That speaks to having a plan and having some concept of what you might be doing there. And so readiness is, I guess, the direction that we're giving, that we want to be prepared if and when the time comes. You know, as our earlier discussion about the brand and branding and T-shirts and that, you know, we're like, oh man, we should have talked about this sooner, right? Well, we don't want to be there when something like a washroom possibility or grant money for something like that comes along. We don't want to be a year away from being ready. So. Any other comments, or can we say you've got pretty solid direction? And
Yes, thank you so much. That is, that's great direction on that, and that's very clear. I did want to note too that just under the strategies to consider later, if at all, there were two that have not been included on the suggested prioritization of strategies. So I just did want to bring that council's attention because I had included this slide on it. And so that was allowing a diversity of overnight experiences to be operated by a third party, and then as well creating a visitor pavilion and hosting space. And again, those were strategies to consider later, if at all, by the focus group. And so in providing this or in creating the suggested prioritization, had the washrooms on there, but did not have those two items there. So I just wanted to bring that to council's attention if those were things that that you'd like to see included on this anywhere.
I guess one of my thoughts would be that the yurts might be included under private sector opportunities, because I don't think that's something that Kneehill County is jumping in with both feet on. And if we're struggling with the washrooms at the top of the canyon, how are we going to struggle with a pavilion and other event space?
Yep.
Reeve Whitstock.
Yeah, I remember the discussion from the focus group. The pavilion would be the permanent structure, but they were advocating that we go with the temporary tent
Yes.
sort of structure.
Yeah.
So first see how that works out, pans out, how it works in. And then if that's something that's being utilized quite a bit, then we go into pavilion style,
Yes.
permanent structure.
Yes. Yeah, that was the discussion there.
Well, when you think about how event spaces are utilized, particularly things, I think about like the wedding barn in the north end of the county, and I mean, try to get a date, right? And so if you have the right facility in the right place, you won't have any trouble filling it up, that's for sure. But the question becomes, is that a priority for us or not? So I think we would find there's interest. Obviously, there's interest in having weddings there already with very limited facilities, and so.
I think our CAO had one there.
Had pictures there.
He's got proof. He's got proof. Okay, Councillor Christie.
One of the things to keep in mind is that for the wedding venues, COVID changed the rules a bit, where on-site weddings are happening. We're still having receptions and stuff in all facilities, but for sure outdoor weddings is taken off. And our hall is struggling now trying to get the whole venue or the whole program. But for sure COVID's changed the market. Oh, there's my mic off. The COVID's definitely changed that market a bit, so.
And on that note too, there was some of that discussion as well, is that there are other event spaces that are permanent structures in the, in the closer vicinity to Horseshoe Canyon. So whether it be in Drumheller, whether it be in Rosebud. So just looking at, from when the Horseshoe Canyon Master Plan was initially introduced, a lot of time had passed and COVID happened where, there's potential impacts on capacity of those spaces too. So, and that was discussed and I believe helped form some of that prioritization from the focus group. So I just wanted to bring it to council's attention that I didn't include that in this suggested prioritization of strategies, but it is still something that was on the list, but to consider later if at all, so.
All right, are we good? Feel like you've walked to the bottom of the canyon and back up? You're exhausted?
Funicular?
All right, well, thank you. I hope we've given you sufficient direction.
Yes, thank you very much.
Certainly looks pretty in the pictures.
It's actually quite a beautiful spot. Okay, so is there any interest in a quick break, or are we prepared to move on? Is that a yes?
Oh, Mike?
Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, just if, through you, Deputy Reeve, if Committee of the Whole is good with the discussion, to close it out, we would look just to accept for information.
Okay.
What you'll see from there is a direction that the conversation, the direction we've taken from that you'll see us tie that into future financial forecasts, work plans, stuff like that. The only comments I'd offer above what's been said is depending on the resources required for each of those priorities, it doesn't mean that some of them can't take place simultaneously. So if there is, you know, for example, a branding project and a designing washrooms can probably occur simultaneously. Other projects might not be able to, given what resources might need to go into them, but you'll see that come back as part of our recommendation for your further debate. The other reminder to give to Committee of the Whole is you currently have a carryover project from 2021 on the books that was originally put in there for washrooms at the Canyon. That is still sitting in our budget as a carry forward project. Of course, Council called a timeout on that one to do the focus group and stuff like that. But we'll take a look at that and tie that into the recommended funding mechanisms for any of these priorities, because sitting within your budget, you actually have just over 1.3 million already designated for development at Horseshoe Canyon. That's sitting in your existing budget currently. So again, Council has put a hold on that and has indicated that that's not to go forward. But when we tie in these priorities in there, that's some of the area we'll be looking at as part of the recommended funding strategies.
Okay. So then would someone care to make the motion to receive for information?
So moved.
Okay, Reeve Whitstock. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, ladies, Ms. Buchanan and Ms. Sherwick. We appreciate your time and the efforts you put in. So I saw a brief request for a brief recess. We're not at the end of our agenda yet. We have closed session to deal with, so let's take a break for 10 minutes. We'll be back at 11, so it's actually only 7 minutes, but so quick recess. The next item of business is closed session for personnel, section 17 under FOIP. And so I need a motion to go into closed session. Counselor Christie.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to go into closed session. All those in favor? That's carried unanimous. Okay, so we came out of closed session at 11:32. We recessed to allow the return of the gallery. It's 11:34, so we'll go back to our regular meeting. And I'm just going to mention that while we were in closed session, we not only discussed personnel, section 17, but we also talked about intergovernmental relations, section 21 under FOIP. There are no motions to be made coming out of the closed session. So the next motion is motion to adjourn. And I'll do that at 11:35 a.m.